Hello and welcome to Create Crochet with me, Rebecca. In today's video we're going to go right back to the basics and we're going to learn how to change. I've got lots of these visual references for you. So we'll get straight on. And as I said, we are going back to basics, so I'm going to go through exactly what you need to create crochet. So importantly are hooks. And hooks come in all different shapes and sizes, from metal to ones with the handle, which is quite nice for the grip and so your hands don't get too tired, to plastic ones. You can also get wooden ones. I bought myself a set of the plastic ones that when I go on flights, I wasn't sure whether all airlines will allow me to take the metal hooks, so I just picked up these. They're not great to work with, a bit of a review for you, but they're not great to work with because they don't allow the yarn to slide freely up and down. They kind of get stuck a little bit. So that's the hooks. The next thing you'll need is a decent pair of scissors. Mine are sharp because I like to cut my yarn straight away without any loose threads, so that when I'm weaving in my ends, at the end of my project, it is easy to put the yarn through the eye of the needle. Now there are two types of yarn needle, also called tapestry needles. This one I picked up from my local dollar store or pound shop. Really cheap, but it's blunt ended. It won't hurt me at all. And it's great for going through thin yarns. Although it's quite large, you wouldn't think it, but it is actually great for going through thin yarns, because the metal ones are slightly sharper at the ends and can make your work fray as you're weaving in your ends. Don't worry about that terminology. In a later video we will go through all of that. And the last thing a pattern may ask you for is a stitch marker. Again, these come in all different shapes and sizes. Mine is a really simple one. If I've lost my stitch markers, I generally use a different colour of thread that I'm working on. So how to hold your yarn. I'm using any old yarn that I had lying around. Now with your yarn you have the short end, which isn't attached to anything, and then the long end, which is obviously attached to the ball of your yarn. Now here's how I hold my yarn, which is quite unconventional. This is my left hand, this is my right hand. With these fingers here, I grab my yarn and I tend to work like that. So I'll show you what I mean. Don't worry about what I'm doing right now. I will show you how to do this all in a minute. Just showing you how I hold my yarn. So you hold your yarn and I put my yarn over this finger and hold my work with this finger and my thumb, like so that I can work. Don't worry about what I'm doing. I will show you everything, I absolutely promise. I'm literally just showing you how to hold the yarn at the minute. When I hold the yarn in these three fingers, it's light enough that the yarn can slip through, but not loose enough that I lose what's called as tension. Now tension is where your work is either too baggy or too tight or right in the middle. A bit like Goldilocks. Okay, so for the Goldilocks effect, you're going to need to use your ball of yarn, the label, to get the exact hook size. In the US, they are different sizes to what they are in the UK. Now this one is my newest and most favoritist yarn hook, and in the US it would be a size K, and in the UK it's a size 6.5 millimeter. In the US they do hook sizes by letters, and in the UK they do it by millimeters. So moving all that to the side, how to read your yarn label. So this is a yarn ball, and on the ball of yarn they have all these symbols here. Now it took me a while to know what they all meant, I have to admit. The most important one that you'll need is this one here, and that one tells you what hook to use with this ball of yarn to make sure that your Goldilocks is just right. So it's not too loose and it's not too tight. Of course, if you're making something that requires your work to be too tight, you'll want to reduce the hook size. Or if you're wanting a lacy effect where your work has lots of gaps in it, it's quite baggy, you will want to go up a hook size. So what do all of these symbols mean? Bring in visual one. It's on a bit of paper, so there's going to be a bit of rustling, for which I apologise. So the first symbol is this one here. Forgive my drawing, I'm no artist. My stick men have got a lot to be desired. That's what it looks like on my piece of paper, and this is what it looks like on the actual ball of yarn. And as you can see, there's a number in the middle. That number refers to the weight and the thickness of the actual yarn. So when you have a pattern, it should give you the yarn that they used. If not, they will recommend a weight and a thickness of yarn. So when you go shopping, you look at this symbol here and you match it to what they're asking for in your pattern. So the hook size we've just been through, and then you'll have the gauge, which is always worked on a 10 by 10 centimetre square. Now what that means is, and this is what it looks like on this ball of yarn, this one here, is it will tell you how big the measurement of that 10 by 10 centimetre square is and how many stitches it will need to be. So how many stitches make up a 10 by 10 centimetre square? Okay, so that's your gauge. I hope I've explained that correctly. The next one is how to wash your yarn. So if you're making a garment for somebody or for yourself, you'll need to know how to wash it, because you'll have spent ages and be really, really proud of your piece of work. The last thing you want to do is have it stretch or go baggy in the wash because you haven't washed it correctly. So this symbol here with 2 lines underneath it and no dots means wash it cold. 1 dot is gentle wash. With a hand in it and 1 dot, you hand wash it with cool water. And the next one with 2 dots is hand wash it with warm water. Excuse me. Rarely will you wash your wool in a hot wash because it will distort it. Now, I hate these symbols because I do not iron other than if I'm blocking out a piece of crochet work. Now, blocking out is a specific term, and it means once you've finished your work, you will need to iron it in a specific way. Again, we'll do all of this in a later video, I'm just telling you now. You'll need to block it out to almost set it. To set it, you'll need to follow the yarn label here to see how hot your iron should be. So obviously this is do not iron. 1 dot is low, 2 dot is medium. Again, you'll very rarely find it where you can iron it on a hot setting. And forgiving my drawing, this is what it looks like on my label. This one here with a big red cross through it means I can't iron this yarn, otherwise it will just ruin it. The next one is this funny triangle with a cross through it, means do not bleach. So basically anything with a cross in it is do not whatever it is. That one is do not dry clean, do not tumble dry. Dry clean with any solvent, which means you can take it to the dry cleaners and have them do their thing with it. They will know what to do if they're a professional. And that P is dry clean in certain solvents. Okay, so now we are going to move on to actually doing something with our yarn. Now I am going to be using a larger hook than what is required on here, purely because I want you to be able to see what I'm doing for the camera to pick it up. So going back to what I just did, I'm now going to show you what I just did. So you have the short end and the long end. And the first thing that you need to do when you crochet is do a slip knot. You cannot do a chain or anything else without doing a slip knot. So it's well worth trying to master this. There are several different ways of doing it. I'm going to show you how I do it. So you get your yarn, moving that one out the way so you can definitely see this one. Shorthand in left, long piece in right. You're going to wrap the yarn over into a loop. And you have this cross section here. With your left hand, you're going to hold onto that cross section, which leaves your right hand free. Pick up your hook, push it through, bring that long piece through, and that is a very, very loose slip knot. To tighten it up, you're just going to pull on the short piece. Okay, so let's do that all over again. The term to undo your work is called frogging. Now, I don't know whether that's a US term or whether that's known in England as well, but the term to undo your work, to unravel your work, is called frogging. So we know that to weave in is to weave in our ends, to block out is to iron our work to set it, and frogging is to pull apart your work either completely or just to a certain point. So the slip knot again, short piece in left hand. I nearly said short in left hand, which is a bit weird. Short piece in left hand, long piece in my right hand. And all I'm going to do is simply cross over to make a loop, hold the loop at the cross section where the two pieces of yarn cross over. With my hook, I'm going to push it through the loop and bring through the long piece from that loop. And then I'm going to tighten it all up by pulling on the short piece quite firmly. Now this loop, so whatever is on your hook is called a loop. We'll be saying that a lot. Loop, good word. Push it through the loop. Hold on to the long piece that's attached to your ball of yarn and pull. So that has made that loop much shorter. By their very existence, crochet hooks want to put a piece of yarn in here to bring through the loops that's on your hook. So make the hook work for you. So that is what your loop slip knot should look like. So you push it through and tighten it up. How tight to do it? It's a good question, well asked. You want to make sure that your hook can freely go through this loop. Not too loose and not too tight. If it's too tight, you will never get the next loop through that hole. I'll show you what I mean. So from now on, we're going to ignore this short piece. You're going to move that out of the way. So with your hook, hold it out of the way. So if your loop on your hook is too tight, you're never going to get your hook through. You're going to really struggle and your work will be really tight, because on the next round you'll be working into this chain and you'll find it really, really hard. If you have your loop too loose, your work is incredibly baggy and it won't stay the shape that you intend it to be. So it's worth having a go and seeing exactly what works for you. Just doing my slip knot again. Some people are tight crocheters, some people are loose crocheters. I don't know which one I am. So you're holding your yarn however you want. Another way to hold your yarn is if you lie your hand flat, you are wrapping your yarn over your fingers like so. Again, it's whatever works for you. It's worth having a look in books and magazines, because magazines are really good for giving advice onto how to do various stitches. So we've done a slip knot, we've done holding the yarn, and now we're going to chain. I'm right-handed, so I hold my hook in my right hand, and I hold my yarn obviously then in my left hand. Now yarn over, another pattern name for you, is to go from front to back and over the needle. So front to back, catch that front to back in the actual hook and bring through your slip knot like so, and that is your first chain. Your slip knot does not count as a chain. Your slip knot is there literally to give you this first loop here. So you're going to go yarn over, holding your work with this finger and your thumb. I start off with my hook facing upwards, and then as I bring through my chain, I turn my hook like so. Yarn over and bring through, and each time I do a chain, I'm moving these fingers to the last one that I just did. Now once you get comfortable with doing the yarn over, you'll no longer have to sit there and do that, because that's quite a big action to do yarn over. The way I do it is holding my work again, is I use my hook to do the yarn over and bring through. So my left hand more or less stays still, and my right hand does all the work with the hook. I also use this finger just to hold my loop on my hook in its place while I'm doing the yarn over, just so it doesn't get involved and in the way. And as you start to work, the chain will get longer and longer and longer. Now each pattern will tell you how many chains to do. Now life happens, the phone rings, the children need you, or you need to go put the kettle on for a cup of tea, which is what I'm hoping my husband is making me right now. You lose track, is what I'm trying to say. So what you need to do is learn how to count your chains. Again, I've got another visual aid here. Now when you do your chains, you will notice that they have a front and a back. The front is quite an obvious braid here, or a plait. That's what it looks like. The back looks completely different, and it has these bubbles, and it feels different. That feels flat and that feels bobbly. I have never come across a pattern yet where it has asked me to work into the back of the chain, to turn it over, to visually see the back and to work into the back. I've always worked into the front. So that's the front and the back of the chain. Here is how to count your chains. So I've coloured this in black just so you can see the top loop, and it's these top loops that you're going to be counting. So I'm just going to grab a hook. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and this last one is 10. So if I count them, what I've got on my hook right now. So again, that's the front, and that's the back, where I can see these lumps sticking out of the back. So I don't actually know how many I've done. You can take your hook out, and for your work to be secure, you just open up the loop just by pulling on it, and it will open up the loop. So here we go again. We don't count this slip knot here. What we do count is these top loops here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and I've crocheted 12 chains. It's quite stretchy as well. Excuse me. So now you have the chain down pat. If you need to pause the video and really concentrate on your chain. Your chains, by the way, should all be the same size. There shouldn't be one where it's huge and the next one is really, really small. They should all be a consistent size. It won't take long to master this. I promise you it will not take long, but it does require practice. It's only yarn. Nothing's going to happen. No one's going to get hurt. If you get it wrong, just relax. It's all fine. So to tighten up your loop, you put your hook through it and pull it back. Now, I can knit, not very well, but when you do pull your work apart when you knit or frogging, it does make the yarn change shape. It kind of gives it a crimpled effect. When you frog your work, when you crochet, your yarn stays the same shape, stays flat. It doesn't crimple all the way down. So if you do have to pull your work apart, your yarn will be fine. You won't have ruined it, and it won't cost you a fortune. So go ahead, go and get some really cheap yarn. Look at your yarn ball to see what size hook you need, and just sit, watch TV and practice the chain, because most patterns, I'd say about 80% of patterns, require your foundation to be a chain. So on the next row you will need to go back into your chain, and how you do that is, so you have your chain like this and it all looks nice and neat and tidy, and you're really, really happy with it, and you're ready to carry on and do the next round as per the pattern. Each chain is made up of 3 pieces of yarn, almost in a teardrop shape, so they come round like that. You have a top loop, a middle loop, and then you have this bottom loop here. Let me bring it up to the camera, hoping that it won't defocus. So you have this top loop, a bottom loop, and then in between the top and the bottom you have this middle loop. When you go back into this chain, you will need to pick up the middle and the top loop. If you only pick up your top loop, your work will appear baggy. So you must make sure you pick up these 2 loops. And although there are 2 loops on your crochet hook, it is only counted as 1 chain. So if your pattern says chain 10 and then go into the second chain from the hook, you'd go 1, 2, and then in here. Sorry, let me do that again. I think I took it out of the camera range. 1, 2, and then in here for the second chain from the hook, and you pick up the 2 loops like so. So the next thing that we need to do is if you're working in the round, this will be explained in a later video. It basically means going round and round in circles. You will need to make your chain into a circle. Easy, 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 easy. So you've crocheted however many you need according to the pattern, and now you need to make it into a circle. Picking up the top 2 loops of the chain onto your hook. So there I have 1 and 2. With the long piece of yarn, you never ever work the short piece. You're going to go yarn over and bring through the chain with the 2 loops and the last chain that you crocheted, and that is a slip stitch. And your circle is now quite secure. So let's do that all over again. So I'm going to frog my work, pull it apart, not too much. It's just yarn, it's nothing scary. It works for you, not you work for it. So when you bring it round in a circle, you don't want your work all twisted like that, because it will be a nightmare to crochet back into. Trust me, been there, done that. Every mistake, I've probably done it. So if you need to contact me and say, I don't know what I've done wrong here, but it doesn't work, please, please contact me. I've done it, I have laughed about it, and I have confused myself endlessly over it. So the way you flatten out your chain is simply by running these 2 fingers. They're quite important in crochet, I've only just realised that, along your chain. You will feel if it's twisted. If it's twisted, just untwist it. Bring it round as though you're going to fold it in half. Put your hook through the top 2 loops of the first chain that you made, not trying to get it through the slip knot. It will never go through. Well, it might, but it'll be difficult. So through this first chain here, push your hook in. You have 2 loops with the long piece attached to your ball of yarn. You're going to go yarn over, bring through this chain. So again, making the hook work for you and twisting it as you need to, and then bring through this loop over this, under this loop, and that is your slip stitch. So if you are reading a pattern, what does a slip stitch and a chain look like? Now I'm going to be referring to one of my books. It's my go-to book. I'm not going to tell you which one it is, because we're all personal. So when you're reading a pattern, it might be a written in words pattern, or it might be a picture diagram like this. Okay, so ignore these crosses, but the actual chain itself internationally is done with this circle here, this squished circle. That's what a chain looks like. So in this pattern, this would be your foundation chain, and then from that you do these loops, and it tells you how many chains to miss, to leave blank, not go into. If this is confusing, we will be covering patterns and how to read them in a later video. All I'm doing right now is showing you so you can recognise what chains look like. A slip stitch would just be a black dot. So if you were doing this circle that we just did, and it tells you to chain so many and then finish off with a slip stitch, it will be a circle of chains, and then there will be a black dot to signify, a solid black dot, almost like a full stop, to signify slip stitch. Now on your screen right now is what they would look like in a chain. So a chain is signified by a CH, and a slip stitch is signified as an S for Sierra, L for Lima. Again, it's on your screen right now. So the last thing that I want to show you, and you'll need your scissors for this one, whatever your scissors look like, I'm a bit girly so I like mine pink, is to fasten off. So you have your chain, which you have slip stitched into a circle. You have the short piece here, which is redundant, we don't need it, and you have the long piece attached to your yarn, and this is where it gets a bit scary, because you're now going to come along and cut your yarn. And what you're going to do is, with your hook, pull and keep pulling until this yarn here is free, and then just pull firmly. So today we have learned, or I have shown you, sorry, how to recognise yarn ball symbols, how to do a slip knot, how to hold your yarn, how to chain, to recognise the front and the back of your chain, how to count your stitches, what you need to do to see how to go into your chain by picking up the first 2 loops, and how to fasten off. You also now know the terms frogging, brilliant word as far as I'm concerned, which is to pull your work apart, and also to block, which is to iron your piece of work to keep it in shape once it's finished. As I said, I've been Rebecca from Create Crochet. Many thanks for watching my video. I am on Facebook, as you've seen in the links. Please leave me your comments, and in the next video I will hope to see you. Thank you very much.